Mhm. Hello, Lisa Starr. So good to see
Hello.
you again.
Hello, good day.
We are continuing our beautiful routine of meeting together every moon of the 13 moons. And today we're on meeting in the beginning of the Rhythmic Moon, the sixth moon of the 13 moon calendar year. And to all our listeners, especially our new listeners, so we've been doing this now for the sixth time, and we intend on doing it until the 13th moon for the entire year. And every month we share and explore what it is for us to go into this month, and we talk deeply about the tone, which we also meet every 13 days in the wave spell. And this month we're journeying through the rhythmic tone as an entire month. And Lisa has been a teacher, student and teacher of natural time for 26 years already. I've been exploring life through the viewpoint of the dream spell calendar, the 13 moon calendar, for 13 years now. And I like to refer to you as my wise elder. You
Hmm.
have exactly one cycle ahead of me, so I have a lot to learn from you, and I'm really feel blessed with this opportunity to give you the platform also to share your wisdom with more people all over the world. So it's good to have you here again, and thank you for showing up over and over again from the other side of the world, meeting me here online.
Well, I love to be invited because that is really sacred and special, honestly. In this crazy busy world where most people don't follow the calendar, it's really um, special to be able to talk about it with someone. And it's fun and funny that we get to do it from the entire other side of the globe from each other.
Yes, so it's my end of the day and your beginning of the day, which is also
Yeah,
very
anyone
interesting.
watching, just always know that it's pre-dawn for me. Alon's had a long, languorous day to wake up and experience life. So that's a nice polarity we share here also.
Yes, amongst others. Beautiful. So we've completed the overtone moon, which I can definitely say on my behalf was very empowering, transformative, lots of breakthroughs, breakthrough of limitations, which were really I was living by my entire life, and different experiences that really pushed me to my higher potential, whether I was ready for it or not, demanded me, commanded me to step up and accept the fact that I can even be more powerful, more empowered in the way that I live, in the way that I see myself, in the way that I treat life and approach life. It really felt like the overtone moon woke me up from some form of being a bit more, I don't know if sleepy is the word, but not so on top of everything. And the overtone moon really empowered me and commanded me to step into my higher potential. And I really felt radiant a lot of the time because I had to function in a very high high frequency to keep up with all these things that I was commanded to keep up with.
Hmm.
So I'm happy to reach the rhythmic moon, and we'll be breaking down for our listeners this transition between the overtone moon and the rhythmic moon, and how it harmoniously kind of blends in with each other. How is it for you, the overtone moon?
Well, reminding anyone watching that we're both overtone people. So I loved it. I loved it. I loved coming home and felt, I didn't just feel empowered, I felt really powerful. I've kind of like reappropriated the term Amazon from the shipping industry to remember what it's like to be a really powerful woman. And I felt powerful in my body. And those are really big gifts. I mean, I'm not ancient, but I'm aging, and so I just felt really resilient and strong in my body. It was very magical. And I don't agree with you that there's like a slow transition between moons. Like we can just share each of our perspectives, and people who follow the calendar and are watching this can decide their version. But I feel like it's a switch. It just, or the click of changing a dial, like, oh, it's overtone, click, it's rhythmic. So I felt a little bit like, oh, it's not overtone anymore. I don't, there's a certain kind of empowerment to me that you just got to really be satiated with and go for. Don't limit yourself when you're offered the overtone moment, because that empowerment is just very singular. I would talk in hours just about how our culture has kind of shifted from primal empowerment to digital and cognitive and intellectual empowerment. And overtone to me is much more strongly balanced in embodiment and heart strength. So I just love it, and I do think we're not saturated in that now. It's
Definitely,
dissipating.
definitely, definitely. I really agree, and I identify with that. The switch is very felt when it happens.
Mhm.
I was happy to experience this shift because it was really driving me to my highest potential, but also I felt like I'm reaching my limit. Like every time I thought I'm in my limit, and then I kept being pushed forward more. And now the rhythmic moon is coming. I can already feel like, okay, let's integrate all of this now. Let's just realize what just happened and organize life back together from with these new perspectives, the new qualities that I feel like I really embodied. I really relate with embodying. It really felt like it's time to embody higher potentials and ground them into my life. And right now, I feel and I realize just by looking through the viewpoint of the rhythmic moon that it's really time to put life back together again in a new way, rebalance from all of this empowered embodiment.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that as well. Like, I don't have a demand that it always be overtone because I am always overtone. So I have that benefit. I think it's my personal preference to come home to my own tone for a moon. Like that's pleasurable. So I love the rhythmic tone as well because I think it is it's it's not just sort of a relief or a release from the intensity of the overtone, but it just naturally follows through that you would have this blast of power, empowerment, energy, vibrance, radiance. And then you would kind of want to, we'll talk much more about it, but you would want to get things in rhythm. You would want all of that kind of unharnessed, intense, pure, um, yeah, just this energy surge to be like meted out in a rhythm so that it can be sustained, which is how I always speak about the rhythmic tone. Just like, well, it's about getting in rhythm, and rhythm is sustaining for a number of reasons. Instead of being like out of balance surges, exhaustion and taxing ourselves in the normal stressful way. Instead, we find a way for things to be organized in rhythm so that we can carry forward for a long journey.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I would love to hear more from you about the concept of rhythm and how rhythm is this quality that enables us to to go into a longer journey. Because for me, rhythm is always related to music,
Mm.
and rhythm. I always thought also it's because I'm overtone, and rhythm is like the next step. So it always seemed to me like something I'm a bit. It seems like I don't know if challenged by is the word, but it's like I look up to it in a way. I say I'm overtone. I'm used to radiating and stepping up and pushing forwards and breaking through, and then come these rhythmic people, and they're like really about balancing and the energy around them all the time. And I also have quite a few rhythmic musician friends that are very good musicians. And you can really feel how they bring their personality into their music and they hold space and they connect with people through the ability to hold this rhythm. And I've always been asking myself, like, so I often think of them as like, what's their story? I don't completely get it. Like, what's this rhythmic quality? How is it preparing us for the resonant, for the center point of the wave? I'm really curious to hear how you see it.
I was just like doing this quick relational inventory, and I've had three rhythmic partners earlier in my life, and they were all
Wow.
musicians. So I wonder if you have a rhythmic child in like baby or toddler form, just throw instruments at them as soon as possible, because I guess they do have like this innate musical intelligence. Well, the way that I like to think about the rhythmic tone for sort of the non-musician example, because I think we can all reach toward rhythm as like a sonic musical experience, is the way that our bodies are in rhythm. And the word to organize is one that Jose Arguelles chose. Jose Arguelles being the kind of like interlocutor between the ancient Maya and how we're speaking of it in English modern terms. So he had the word rhythmic that he chose, and then he chose that it was time for to organize. And in English, that holds the root word organ, which is an instrument, but is the organs of our body. And so, like, to me, rhythmic is about like getting our organs in rhythm. Like people suffer from arrhythmia when their heartbeat isn't perfectly
Regular.
balanced. So I think of it as a time to try to get our outside life that's conscious to match our inside of our body's life that's unconscious. Like I'm unconsciously having a heartbeat, I'm unconsciously watching. I mean, inhalations and exhalations I can have some control over, but mostly I'm not thinking about it and it's still happening. And same with all the other systems in our body that keep us functioning basically as a like flesh machine. And so you can use that anchor to just be like, this will be the time, inevitably, where I'm going to see my own life become more measured and in rhythm, in some way calmed, so that it can be sustained. You know, as I live, it'll be much more like the intuitive way life works instead of the explicit, manipulative, controlling way our minds can sometimes interfere.
Mm.
But I mean, always go back to the musician rhythm if you're beginning, because that's exactly the same. I just have along the way wanted to reappropriate the term organized because it can be kind of like compulsive, analytical. I must have order. I'm just doing this and that just to stay busy. And that exists in the rhythmic tone, but it's sort of, I think, more of the shadow part, and the pure essence and the light part is, like I said, just wanting fluidity between the unconscious rhythm our bodies hold and our actions and experiences during the rhythmic time.
So it's in a way it's like a calming of the system, calm back down.
Yeah, like regulating is a word
Mm.
that people use in psychology.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're dysregulated, you might be actually acting insane or mentally unwell. But if you're regulated, there's harmony and
Mm.
peace.
Mm.
And I think that's important, not just because of the overtone, but everything up until now. You know, we've had five moons or tones in every wave spell that are very busy, very much like what we need to like launch, as we've talked about,
Yeah.
from stillness or in the intensity of new karma and sort of getting through all these layers until we are rolling, which is what overtone represents to me. And then now we're going to hit a rhythm. And I talk about it much more. I love that you're going to speak about the resonant moon being the middle point, because it is literally true. But I always think of things in the shape of a wave, and that Overtone is when we break from the surface of the ocean, like I said last time, where you can suddenly see water moving into its mountain form. But in order to keep going, we need rhythm to reach the peak of our journey, which would be the planetary or the 10th of 13. So we have to find a way to sustain instead of, bursting and breaking. We want to find a way to sustain for the journey that takes us to the peak of this wave's crest, which
Which you
is as
see on the
far.
10th day, right? The planetary
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, because that's as far as we can go. I mean, I can go on, but and we'll be there in a few moons at the planetary, but it's like as if this journey is always trying to get to the sun, as if sun is pure enlightenment or sitting in the presence of a God that you understand. And we're not going to go there because we're alive. That would be beyond life experience. So this wave is trying to get us to the sun, and it'll only get us so far. And that the rhythmic tone is really an important time to allow us to get as far as we can because we find a way to harness the energy that's beneath us um, to make it, last.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, it's a lot. Sorry, guys. I This is one of these concepts that kind of blasts out of thinking of just the moon that we're in, but to kind of be back in the totality of the whole experience of 13, which is sacred. And hopefully you do keep that in mind. We go through 13-day wave spells, so it's easier to see it in that frequency. But I also, in each moon that we're in, am sometimes more aware than others of the whole year's arc.
Yeah, I think this is really something that you've been practicing for quite some time. I'm quite new at following the moons of the year, and I can believe that the more cycles you follow, you start to recognize the patterns of how it feels or remember feelings from the last rhythmic moon, and this is how I experience the wave spells and the cycles of the dream spells. So it's for me really I feel like the rhythmic tone is the one that I'm the most the student of than all the
Okay.
other tones. It's really a tone that because I think it's just above me, it's just after the overtone, so I'm always really kind of it's right, it's really close to me, but it's just close enough that I look beyond it because it just comes straight after. And for example, in my community, in my subscription program, where I made forecasts for all the 260 days of the dream spell calendar, so I found myself regularly speaking of the rhythmic day like a good day to reorganize your house, or do all these things that you postpone, like bills and all this things that you don't really like doing and you keep on the side of your mind, like, yeah, I need to get to that. So I always I noticed that I'm recommending for people on the rhythmic day to do these kind of things, and then many people started telling me, I've really been listening to, and I've started to organize my house on the rhythmic day, and I did these things on the rhythmic day that, and I like being an inspiration as a white mirror for order and organizing. It feels good. I command order according to my signature. So and it's quite true. I do. Um, so the rhythmic, for me, it's not so much like my order, my way of order. It's more like organizing it, chill. Just take your time till you feel balanced, which is a good place to be, especially for me when I look at it towards the peak of the wave, the middle point from my white mirror perspective. So I'm all about symmetry. So I put the seventh day on top, and then the rest of the wave is sitting in perfect symmetry. I don't necessarily think it's the right way, but it's the most intuitive way for me to approach any kind of something I can orderly divide into
Well, that's white
into
mirror,
two.
right?
Yeah. So the top point of the wave is the resonant, and so at any peaking point of any kind of process in life, we want to get there as balanced as we can because it's one specific kind of thing we're going to go through and then it'll pass. So it's like we have an opportunity to experience a certain experience or activate a certain activation, or like I always see it like an event, like a production. So you get to that pinnacle point of the production where everything kind of builds up to, and then comes the unwinding part when the unwind is symmetrical to the build up. And so the rhythmic point, it's like a good time to chill before you get to the peak. And then it's like, yeah, let's organize the space, you know, let's regulate ourselves, maybe do a little ceremony or meditate or just sit chill without doing anything because you've been building it up this whole time. So when you get to the high point, so you're there, you're channeling, you're what do you think about that?
I mean, I think this is fun in case anyone listening, like this is like your parents fighting. Like I don't at all agree with I mean, because I just told you that like one of my most certain philosophical stances about the wave spell is that it peaks at the planetary one. I mean, if anyone listens to my work like through my podcast or would read my book, etc., and I don't, this isn't an actual argument. I'm just almost like it's like being caught unaware that there could be another idea because I'm so committed to my own. Um, like I just can't imagine that the wave spell would have a peak so early on because I'm conditioned to seeing a wave be something that takes a long time to build and then it collapses so quickly. It to me, there's 10 moons or tones of ascent and one of descent,
Release.
the
Hmm.
spectral, and that's what the spectral tone means, falling apart. So, and then there's the crystal and cosmic tones or moons when we get there that are about kind of the settling and the stillness after that event has happened. And I also really think about it like all traditional uh, play arcs, theater arcs, and, drama arcs are that slow build up, build up, build up, build up. Things get really intense, they explode, and that's the ending. It ends very quickly. So, anyway, having committed my whole teaching philosophy to that shape of the wave spell, I am happy for, one of the most important things I've always felt in introducing the calendar concept to people is you're going to trust yourself. I am telling you maybe what Jose Arguelles taught me through his legacy. I've lived the experience. I have my own impressions. We get attached to them or we come from our own astrological perspective. And this is all available. There isn't any pope here, There is no Bible, actually, nothing equivalent to that. We're just given this key whole, and we kind of develop like what is the thing that will open my own mind, heart, and experience. So anyway, so you're seeing these different ways it's evolved for each of us personally.
Yeah.
And then I would just sort of throw in there, maybe leading us into this next discussion, is that one thing that's really lovely to realize is that unlike if you follow the Zolkin, the 260-day and the 13-day wave spells, you're always like it's only 9 months long, right? 260 days is 9 months. So it's always changing like which wave spells, which time of year, the Gregorian year or the seasonal year. Whereas the 13 moon calendar is totally the journey of the earth around the sun, just like the Gregorian calendar. And so this is always when it's the rhythmic moon. December 13th is when the rhythmic moon begins every single year. And so you can, when you're following these moons, start to realize this is just the Mayan version of months. I mean, that's literally true, right? And so the overtone moon is always late fall, November. The rhythmic moon is always this holiday season, three stacked holidays, whether you're pagan or Christian Or if you celebrate the Gregorian calendar, it's New Year's, which is meaningless to me at this point. So I'd like to kind of talk with you about you can you can almost analyze like what is the rhythmic tone or moon by recognizing how we experience this time of year culturally. And I'll stop because it's probably different for you than for me. We come from different cultures. I'm in America, you're in Israel, so different temperates, climate wise.
as well. Even though I think consciously, because perhaps we're both on the northern hemisphere, so there is this kind of four season time, and we do experience somewhat similar energy of the climate, even though in your area it must be a bit colder than here, but also here in some areas it can get quite cold in the mountains. But here we have the holiday of Hanukkah, which is symbolically in some ways similar to Christmas. In some ways, it doesn't have the a similar religious story, but it does kind of bring forward the lighting light in the darkest time of the year as a symbol of from like of a resurrection. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Hanukkah, but there's like a miracle there of a little like pot of oil that was supposed to last for just a little bit, and it lasted for 7 days, for an entire week after the second temple was destroyed by the Romans. And it's kind of symbolizing that when there's faith and belief and unity, even in the biggest struggle, the time of biggest devastation, then miracles can happen, that even a little bit of light can shine really, really bright, and even save you when you think you're about to end it all, everything's gonna finish, no light, no heat, in the middle of the winter, suddenly some miracle can happen. Here they speak often of the God, the same as in Christianity, that kind of helps the people in hard times, the people that believe in Him. And so it's kind of telling the story that when you have faith in your heart and you really want to live, so there will always be more light even in the darkest times. So I'm sure symbolically with the numbers as well, it can all relate together. But I'm curious how it meets your culture and tradition, and how this connects for you to the rhythmic moon.
Well, my culture is the American consumerist culture. I mean, that's the culture I live within, right? And so I've probably been trying to get away from that culture for a long time. I mean, I love that you just described a religious holiday because when I think about what happens this time of year that kind of earmarks the rhythmic moon is when we have Christmas, solstice, and New Year's. To me, there's just all of this organizing that people do for that, like the to-do lists and the Christmas lists. And I picture like everyone has a little role as an elf in order to launch a Christmas festivity, and people come from in each family all over, and all of the, plane reservations and like it's just it's like we're harnessing this rhythmic energy, which could be used for something much purer in my mind toward this one goal. But behind it is that seasonal celebration. I mean, the history of these winter holidays was, or I guess originally all about noticing the darkest days and then feeling the light returning. And so that reminds me of the rhythm of seasons, which is one of the ways that humans have and can still feel small and in awe. One is looking out at the stars at night and imagining the vastness of the galaxies, but so many more people are watching a computer screen at night than ever. It used to be television, and now it's just even more broadly. You might hold your phone as a flashlight when you're outside instead of paying attention to the sky. So the same quality of behind the frenzy of shopping and buying and preparing and maybe like horrible family ordeals that people go through, whatever, the shadow energy of a holiday, behind that is just like every year we gather and do this. It's kind of the minimalized primalcy of humans seeing the need to commemorate the great rhythm, which is sort of the rhythm of our rotation through the solar system. So that's what I think about quite a bit, is here we are again. I have to say, this is just personal. To me, as one ages, the years just go faster and faster. And I think the culture of information also accelerates our perception of time. And I just can't believe anyone's ready to do something as boring as replicating, last year's Christmas experience. Like it just happened in a way, and it's the same thing over and over. So, how is that interesting to anyone? And I mean, that's a blue storm perspective, probably, where I need things to be different and change. And so, one of the things I love about the rhythmic moon having 28 days of the rhythmic tone is to really drop in, as you described, to what part of my life generally am I trying to organize? Like, do I want to? I'm impelled to. And I was a very diligent student growing up because it anchored me from the kind of chaos of my upbringing. Like, no, I'll do my homework. My homework has like a finite time and requirement, and it's like I was a spiritual disciple in some way of learning. And so I love dropping into the rhythmic tone because it has that same essence to me of like, I will just do this and then the next thing and the next thing. And in that, I feel the holiness. I feel it. I feel it not as like, oh, I'm
Mm,
compulsively cleaning. Here I go again, needing everything to be in order. Instead, I feel like this ancient reverence comes through the tone that we used to. I mean, I have no idea what it felt like living it, but there was a kind of decency and purity to repeating tasks each day. I feel like we try to invent our way out of the mundane quality of repetitive tasks each day, but that part of repetition I really love. Again, it feels like it puts my life into the same rhythm or cadence as my body functions.
I like that. I don't know, something when listening to you now, I was touched. I suddenly got touched inside, like from had a nice feeling of, came with like this understanding that the rhythmic tone is actually, you can say, in some way connected to ritual, to
Mhm.
repetitive ritual. And it is such a quality that when sustained, it has so much value in a person's life to have this rhythm, this repetitiveness, knowing that something is going to happen. But I'm not speaking about routine, which is more like daily life, secular life, more the person's connection to anything divine, anything beyond the everydayness of life. I mean, some people, for them, the ritual is making their coffee every morning.
Mhm.
But their coffee isn't like, oh, I need to drink coffee every morning to have energy to start the day. It's kind of like my morning coffee is my time to just land into the day and maybe think of what's coming, or just have that moment with myself. And it's a ritual that connects to something beyond the physical. And I think it touched me because I realized listening to you that I've been keeping many rhythmic practices in my life over my, I guess it's also a part, it comes with the order of the white mirror that I really appreciate. And I think also the rhythmic mirror is also a portal day because of this, because it's like organized and order and together. But I do really, really appreciate and value whenever I'm able to ground some kind of a ritual, whether it's a daily ritual, a weekly ritual, a monthly ritual, or a yearly ritual, which is what you guys have with Christmas. And I always notice because in Judaism, the ritual of coming together as a family around something beyond the everydayness what you call mundane. It shows up for us every week on Friday evening with the Shabbat. And I remember when I was living abroad and I was realizing that for all my friends, once a year is the time that they expect to make an effort, a special effort to go and be there with their families for one night. And then I realized how important it is to have this ritual for them. Like the culture holds this ritual, even though it became like a mega consumerism, especially in America, in North America, like a holiday, but it is the importance of this rhythm that the culture is keeping for itself that still keeps some connection to the divine, even though the vast majority of the culture is secular and the vast majority of the culture has no spiritual connection to the idea of Christmas and why it's actually being celebrated. Just this rhythm that brings families together,
Yeah.
as intense as it must be. I mean, meeting your family that comes from all over the place, I don't know, to the parents' house for one night. Maybe they spend 2 nights together because they came from a long distance, or 3 nights. That must be, I always thought that must be so intense for so many people. Like if you have a good family, that you're happy to come home to, then it's nice. But humans are humans. We have our issues, and coming back, especially for this very like consumer indulged induced experience that's like, okay, we have to have a really big meal and eat a lot and drink a lot and give many presents. And sure, it's not like this for everybody. I'm overtoning it, I'm exaggerating it for the point, but um
I think you're being pretty representational, actually.
okay. Okay.
But that like leads me to want to like point to the other approach. Like what I like about the way, let's say, American culture overdoes one holiday. It's as if they give it their all because they're not really going to be thinking, it's the Mass of Jesus Christ, which for me, I'm not like raised Christian, but I totally touch into him being one of the most powerful spiritual healers, ambassadors of the message of divinity, ever, because why would there be this duration of his influence? So anyway, I can be totally behind that celebration of that teacher. But that's not what the countdown is for most people. It's the count. Like it's an absorbed time. The holidays here absorb your work life because there'll be work parties or different seasonal parties, and so your whole rhythmic moon sort of has these agendas where you have to arrive somewhere and see people, and it's as if we've crammed all of this capital of ritual of a kind into one moon, which to me reveals that the rhythmic moon is about that. It is about ordering our lives in preparation for the emptiness of the resonant moon, which we'll talk about obviously next moon, as if the rhythmic moon isn't just falling on the heels of the overtone blast of radiance, but also preparatory, the bridge to the resonant moon, which is when we are empty channels and receive. And so you see that even in modern culture, that there's this frenzy of doing, and then there's this new year where people have these aspirational goals of being pure. And so there's debauchery before purity. Um, the one thing I want to point out that I think is really aberrant and people could look to change in the northern hemisphere is just like animals, it's dark out, short days, colder weather, internal, sleepier. We sleep longer. We need more sleep. In the summer, we need less. And so when people are doing, and, shopping or preparing for something, a milestone within the moon, that's where I feel like it's aberrational. And in the rhythmic moment of 28 days, it's really good to harmonize yourself with nature as much as possible, to be in rhythm with nature. And the rhythm of nature is allowing yourself to slow down. I equate the kind of busy doing of the rhythmic moment as a really great time to do internal in-home things that are of smaller scale than like if you're a gardener, farmer, mountain climber, all these outward nature goals that you can do in lighter months, warmer times. Like, okay, well, this is the moment where my little small mouse animal self, or as you were saying between us, that it's the moon of the lizard. The lizard is like small little reptilian creature that can be in little cracks and has a certain delicacy, and that we can be like that animal in this time,
mm,
kind of small in the face of the grandeur of the scale of nature or the scale of the solar system, which again tilts us away from the sun and all these other miraculous astronomical concepts.
mm,
I just want to, 35 years ago was my last family Christmas, just because I didn't understand what was spiritual about anything we were doing. And as a very much younger person, I rebelled and just like, I'm not willing to do holidays that aren't holy days. So, um, it's kind of a fight because the culture really has a uniform idea of what happens this time of year. And the last thing I'll say is just like the only time I'm ever a little snot about following natural time is on the Gregorian New Year's, where I'm just like, not my New Year, like I have that one moment where I don't celebrate that. I don't own a Gregorian calendar. My one commitment to my truth is that the Gregorian calendar is a bureaucratic, arbitrary, arrhythmic. Like that's the biggest deal. The calendar months are not rhythmic
mm.
because they're of different lengths. And to me, that's like bad policy and bad science. And so I reject that. And so I drop out because all these people are like, it's a new year, it's a new beginning. And that's when I'm the same as you, where I'm like, it's mid-year, it's exactly the middle. And I have my little private pride that I have this secretive, tiny, esoteric path that makes me feel like I'm in a truer version of time. So I just want to jam all that. That's like a projection of the ceremonies that are really predominant right now.
Yeah, yeah. And also it stands out from everything you said, the importance of holding a rhythmic concept of time in our consciousness as a connection to something beyond what this modern culture is kind of dictating for us. Because as spiritual as one can be, I can say on myself that, I run a business, I pay taxes. These taxes are significant amounts of money that I'm needing to give out to this greater body system that's kind of supposed to be running the whole collective constructs of our society. And whether I want to or not, I need to play the game because it's just how this reality right now is organized, and I don't want to be battling reality all the time. I tried that as well for some time. It was a good experience, but it wasn't sustainable for me. Um, and so holding a natural rhythmic construct of time as at the same time I'm walking within this artificial time structure. It really gives me like space to breathe, like what you said, like remembering it's not a new year because someone else said it's a new year. If for me I decide that this for me is a meaningful time, then great. Like I always encourage people to make positive changes any time of the year, and
Right.
and put good intentions for their lives and themselves any time of the year. But if it helps someone to feel like everybody together is collectively in a new beginning to make real change, then great. But from what I've experienced for most of my life, this New Year's resolution statements, they're usually more like a commercial of the life I want to live, but eventually it's not synchronized with how reality really works.
Mhm.
So most people, unless they're really driven to make a change anyways, and they just catch this collective energy wave to push themselves forward, it's kind of like I don't know, like a Coca-Cola Christmas commercial. It's like, it's festive. Look, there's a Santa with the beard and everything, and the reindeers and the drink. It's great. You drink it on your Christmas day. But then the sugar rush goes down, and you leave the family, and you notice again how much challenges you have with this family that maybe one day you'll try to resolve. But what I'm saying is that from listening to you, I'm really understanding how beautiful it is to hold rhythm in our lives. Like music that's in sync with rhythm and musicians that are playing together in synchronization around the same vibration of rhythm, it's beauty. It's just simple beauty. And so, if there's one thing I'm taking from our conversation, it's this feeling that I felt listening to you. It's like rhythmic being is beautiful being. It's like healthy being. Like when my body can run its natural course with as little interferences and disruptions of stress and all these symptoms of going too fast or freezing and not going in the natural rhythm, they make us personally not feel connected to ourselves, and then it's like we disconnect from ourselves. We forget how powerful we are, how beautiful we are, how unique we are, how much our presence is a gift. And so one thing I'm taking from this meeting of ours is that I really cherish any kind of rhythm I'm able to sustain in my life. And I'm also really intentional about, as life goes on, continuing to establish this possibility of good rhythms, healthy rhythms that enable me to know that I'll always be doing this thing as always as can be, that will make me feel good, like meditation, like physical activity, like eating properly and or in rhythm, in a good rhythm, like maintaining relationships in a certain rhythm that I feel keeps the connection and keeps the connection, expanding. And it's really touched me. I can't really put it more than that into words, but just listening to your somehow really touched me. So thank you.
Well, I love that idea. Like when we think of a spiritual practice or a yoga practice, which is physical as well, or maybe you're just an athlete, but you know you need the endorphins and you go running every so many number of days, which was my overtone experience of being an Amazon, is just being a runner. Um, so it doesn't have to be like some ancient practice that's spiritual for it to be a true, meaningful way of regulating, putting rhythm in your life. But I think the rhythmic moon is just this, like we grab at 28 days of immersion, almost like we could design our own spiritual awakening retreats for ourselves each 28-day moon. This one, everything is in favor of you having a balanced rhythmic practice of some kind. Like if you struggle with that, this is your moment where you get to have that
Mm,
opportunity. And that's why I think what I meant was for me a long time ago, I just innately and then more consciously chose to use the rhythmic moon not to prepare for these couple of holidays that mean a lot to other people, but to be really open, like what wants to get organized in my life now? What part of my life has sort of been waiting for this moment to have the skill and the focus on the details that form the whole, almost like you are every part of an orchestra or a band creating rhythm. Like I'm the drummer, the bass player, like you see yourself kind of compartmentalize, like, wow, I'm handling this over here and this is happening here. And look, my life now for this time, I'm getting a lot done. I'm getting a lot done. Functionally. And I do want to say, like I talk about this in my own work, like there are certain tones within the 13 and certain tribes within the 20 tribes that replicate kind of what we're expected to do as humans. Like we have a social agreement, and one is to be organized, like that's better than being disorganized when we meet humans. And so I
Yeah,
like the rhythmic moon. If you relent and let yourself be human, like you're going to notice, like, I'm doing pretty good in the way that I'm expected to right now.
I like that. I like that. So, what would you say are connecting to everything we're just speaking about are like healthy practices? What tips can you give for our listeners for things that can be good and healthy to do on the rhythmic moon?
Well, I always feel bad for the Australians and South Americans and maybe some deep Africa, South Africans that listen to anything I teach because I'm such a Northern Hemisphere hog, like so to that end, with that disclaimer, I I don't want to say that winter solstice is not a big deal. It is. It's really a big deal to me as a renewal. So I understand the concept of attaching the Gregorian New Year to winter solstice. I just don't think people do enough of that. So I guess my answer is to do be an animal and notice how your habits are innately drawn to slower movements or more reverence for the daylight hours or that hint of sun that comes through your winter weather and respond to that because that's rhythmic. Like that's not just, I mean, I'm working on my taxes. So you were talking about that. And I'm excited because I don't like doing that kind of thing. But right now I have this opportunity to do the repetitive bureaucratic rituals that are expected us, in our cultures and society. Like this is a great time to do that as well. But underneath that, I wouldn't want to lose sight of being really responsive and awake to the literal truth that we physically respond to seasonal change in our bodies to such a bigger degree than what our minds can decide to do to overcome it. And so to be in rhythm with nature and your own body that wants to respond to this lack of light and ease that sort of the summer sunshine brings.
So I take from that maybe allowing yourself to sleep more and letting the body kind of yeah, rebalance, recover from the time that has led until now, and also to um, yeah, for me it directly sends me to like organizing parts of the house that have been forgotten, cleaning the corners from under the bed, all these kind of things that we usually don't get to in our movement forward, but usually only when we kind of go back in and say, okay, so what's going on around me? What needs my attention? What have I not given attention to for some time? So this is where it sends me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I'm just laughing because if you be on the computer screen, is it just one little pile of resurrected, back cornered? What is in that box? I need to know right now. I love being such a good scholar of these wave spell formations that I'm like automated by them. Like it is time to do this because it is the rhythmic moon. I will now uncover all these pieces of, artistic creations I no longer want. They will go away. Like that makes me very exhilarated to feel the rhythmic tone. Again, it can feel kind of small and mundane, but it is so much about syncing up and how, I'm sorry, I'm kind of oversharing right now, but like the last little thing that wants to jump out is reminding everyone that this is a rhythm of itself, the count of 13. It's supposed to represent sort of all the facets of doing on a journey of growth. And we need a time to get things in order. Again, we were doing all this like visceral, like, what? This is my purpose. This is challenging. I need to be of service. This is how my service will get mapped out. And then this explosion of the overtone energy vortex. We all need a pause to be like, okay, where am I? where's real life in the midst of all of this psychic growth? This is a real life moment, meaning like sentient human. I need to clean. I need to put these things that exploded back into some kind of order. And again, I'm just inviting people. I've bet a lot of listeners are already there, and I don't proselytize to non-listeners. I don't walk around and go, "Why don't you slow down with your holiday shopping and come back to nature?" Like I don't have that role. That's not, I don't want to oppress people with this belief system, but for those listening, it's just like do way less in service of the consumerist part of the season and just harness this moment of ordering your life for what you deserve. We all deserve to not be like, oh, what is that over there that I haven't addressed? It feels so good to go through it and address it and have it liberated from being a brain fog. I need to do that. Do it. Right now is a great time to do things that you've avoided because we often
Beautiful.
avoid the meticulous ordering of our human life.
That's beautiful. I think that's a very precise message to conclude this session with. Um, I think we really, I feel for me, I've gained a lot of clarity that I'm really happy to have gained from this conversation about the rhythmic tone and the rhythmic moon. And and that I feel it's really synced me into this time. So thank you so much again for being with me here and for enabling us for eternal time, for as long as there will be internet to receive from your wisdom. And just remind our listeners that Lisa, um, amongst others, through her her website, you can get information about this wisdom from different angles, and also you've written books to enable people to learn this wisdom, and you also give private sessions and personal sessions, oracle sessions and healing sessions, connected with this special time we're living in, and you have a lot of beautiful life experience and beautiful depth that you bring with you, and lots of spiritual wisdom that you've gathered from different experiences of your life. So I really recommend to look you up, resonanttruth.com, and also connect to your podcast on Spotify, Natural Time, and ride the waves with you from your perspective. I enjoy it very much.
Well, Alone is a mirror. So he just explained who I am because that's also who he is. So I think that covers both of us. We're both all of those things, and that's why it's so fun to talk.
It really is. So we'll be meeting up again in the Resonant Moon
Mhm.
pretty much 1 month from now. Looking forward to it very much. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Have a good wintry, festive organizing time.
That's right. Right. Yes, everyone, enjoy the holy days